the Tyser's disease. And I think I have discussed the up to gross pathology of the Tyser's disease. Histopathology was discussed or not? Anybody maintaining notes?
No, sir.
The Clostridium piliforme, and it is characterized by triad of lesions. The enteritis, actually, it is on the large intestine side. Then the hepatic lesions, which are very characteristics. The hepatic necrotic foci are formed, and then in some species, the heart lesions, the necrotic foci are also observed on heart. Histopathologically, in intestine, this Clostridium piliforme is found in the villus. Sometimes it is found colonizing the surface of villus, and found very frequently even deep inside the villus. And these bacilli are seen to colonize even sometimes the muscularis mucosa, sorry, muscularis of the intestine in some cases. And around these infiltrates, around these the bacterial colonies, there is infiltration of the neutrophils and then later on the mononuclear cells. The bacteria, as pathogenesis states, gains access through and in liver it will form the necrotic foci wherever they get lost. So that is why mostly through lymphatics and also through blood vessels, through lymphatics and also through blood vessels. So therefore, the primary foci of lesions developing in liver are found around the blood vessels. Although foci are seen also away from the blood vessels, but yes, the numerous primary foci of necrosis are found around the blood vessels, which is an indicator that there is hematogenous spread, or I should say, portal spread from intestine to liver. Then in the intestinal necrotic foci, there is hepatic, there is a focus of the necrosis where there is necrotic debris, some WBCs, some necrotic debris, and some dead and dying bacteria here and there. Major population of bacteria are seen intracellularly around the around the necrotic lesion. On the periphery of necrotic lesions, in the viable cells, we find presence of bacteria. Now, see, in intestine also, the bacteria is seen intracellular in the enterocyte and even in the inside the phagocytes in the intestine also. That I forgot to mention that point. Similarly, in heart also, the bacteria is seen intracellular inside the myocytes in the necrotic foci. The necrotic foci of liver are infiltrated by initially neutrophils and later on by mononuclear cells. Sometimes the necrotic debris may also show presence of RBC. Okay, once again I'll repeat that the bacteria is seen intracellular in the viable hepatocytes around the necrotic foci. The necrotic foci contains the necrotic debris, some dying WBCs, and also very few bacteria. But major population of bacteria are on periphery. In intestine also, bacteria is seen intracellular in the enterocytes as well as in the phagocytes or other cells. In heart also, bacteria is seen intracellular in the myocytes and around the necrotic foci, viable myocytes around the necrotic foci. This is the histopathology of the Tyser's disease. The diagnosis of Tyser's disease is made on the clinical signs, the pathological lesions, the characteristic histopathological lesions. The histopathology of Tyser's disease is very characteristic. Okay. Then there is silver staining. Silver staining to demonstrate the bacteria. The bacteria can be demonstrated by silver staining. The Clostridia can be demonstrated by silver staining. This is a specialty of the Tigers disease. Then PCR is very important. PCR is very important, which can diagnose the hidden infection also, and also characterize the strain of Clostridia infecting Clostridium filiforme, infecting the colony. Then the serological tests are important to screen the colonies. Serological tests are important to screen the colonies. PCR can also be applied to feces, litter, and feed, and even dust of the lab animal house. Feces, litter, dust of the lab animal house, and also feed, because this will show the presence of bacterial DNA and reveal the contamination of premises by Clostridium filiforme. So hereby we conclude the first disease, Tigers disease. Then we go to next disease, pseudotuberculosis. Pseudotuberculosis. There are different types of pseudotuberculosis. What we have in our course is Corynebacterium kutscheri, or Corynebacterium kutscheri. Corynebacterium Kutscheri. Kutscheri. Corynebacterium kutscheri. This causes the pseudotuberculosis in rat mice, clinical pseudotuberculosis in rat mice, and there is subclinical disease, subclinical infection in guinea pig and hamster. There is no pseudotuberculosis generally found, but subclinical infection in guinea pig and hamsters. The bacteria is gram-positive and coroniform. Coroniform means club-shaped. Bacteria is gram-positive and coroniform. This bacteria is ubiquitous in nature, found everywhere, even in soil, sewage, and even in marine water. And this Corynebacteria, different species and strains of Corynebacteria, have been utilized to digest out the oil spills in the oceans. Whenever there is spillage of the crude oil or the petroleum oil on the surface of the ocean. As we have seen, the major cause or major predisposing factor for all diseases turns out to be mismanagement and immunosuppressive factors. So similarly, in Corynebacterium kutscheri infection also, the mismanagement, the deficiency, use of the corticosteroids, irradiation or immunosuppressive drugs, the wrong type of feed given to the animal, all these immunosuppressive factors, the concurrent infection, viral infections, anything that can lead to immunosuppression can predispose the animal to pseudotuberculosis. Even weaning in the animals. The transmission is by direct contact, especially the fecal-oral route. Direct contact by fecal-oral route, oronasal exposure can transmit the disease. Other species which carry can infection. Infection can be transmitted between guinea pig to rats, rat to mice, mice to hamster, and hamster to back then. So this interspecies transmission also takes place. The contaminated feed, litter, water, the fomites used in the colony, the farm workers all can carry this infection to the fresh colony. So in rats, the disease is found rarely. Nowadays, this disease is rarely found, but often subclinical infection is observed. And this subclinical infection remains, obviously it is hidden and flares up during the experimentation. The major problem with these diseases, laboratory animal diseases, is that they are hidden in the colony, or in animals and flare up during the experimentation. Thus, they actually spoil the experiment. So one of such disease is the pseudotuberculosis because it is remaining subclinical in the rats and can come up on the treatment with any factor or any reason which is immunosuppressive. Now, clinical signs include ruffled fur. Ruffled fur. Fur is ruffled as if somebody has disturbed it. The hunched posture. They take a hunched posture. They show dyspnea, rails, porphyria. Porphyria is appearance of porphyrin pigment in the tears of animal. Porphyria is appearance of porphyrin pigment in the tears of animal. Therefore, what happens is around the eyes, a reddish deposit is seen. Reddish deposit is seen. Some people call it bloody tears or bloody crying. It is not blood, it is porphyrin that is appearing in the tears. So porphyria is seen. Then mucopurulent ocular and nasal discharge are also seen. Mucopurulent ocular and nasal discharge. Lethargy and lameness. Lethargy and lameness are also seen. Once the clinical signs appear, the animals die by 1 to 7 days. Once the clinical signs appear, the death takes place between 1 to 7 days. The adult animals also show the infection, and it is quite frequent, frequent in adult animals because the longer they live, the more chances of them harboring the infection. Gross lesions. Gross lesions include solitary to multiple granulomas or abscess, which are placed randomly on the affected organs. Solitary means single or multiple granuloma slash abscess which are placed randomly on organs. Why I am saying granuloma slash abscess? Because initially the necrotic foci is having neutrophilic infiltration and liquid pus. And later on, it turns into caseous pus with mononuclear and giant cell infiltration. Later on, it turns into granuloma. So either it may appear as abscess or it may appear as granuloma in the later stage. So this granuloma and abscess, this necrotic foci, can be singular or there may be many on the affected organs. And most commonly affected organs include lungs, liver, kidney. Lungs, liver, kidney, visceral organs, and on skins, liver, kidney, and also on skin and joints. Very commonly, the animals also affected animals. Very commonly means in a colony where the outbreak is going on. Very commonly, the animal also show suppurative infection of preputial glands, and also tympanic bullae in ears. Tympanic bullae in ears. This leads to incoordination. In the animals. This leads to incoordination in the animals. Histopathologically, the site of infection can have the just before histopathology, it is better to go for pathogenesis. Pathogenesis is better to understand, then the histopathology will be easier to catch. See, there is always a latent infection in the affected animals or affected colony. Will have few animals subclinical infection or latent infection, and then there is a precipitating factor, predisposing factor of immunosuppression. Now, when the immunosuppression takes place, bacteria is able to colonize and proliferate in some part of the body, whether it is intestine or in the respiratory tract, that whichever the immunosuppression is primary. So there is formation of the primocus of the bacterial colony. From here, the bacteria group enters the bloodstream and it is spread to other parts of body. This we call it as septic embolism. Septic embolism occurs, and this septic emboli gets lodged in the organs which are having small capillaries or terminal capillaries, large network of small capillaries or terminal capillaries. For example, the kidneys. For example, the liver with sinusoids. And of course, definitely maximum affected is the lungs. So it gets lost in these small capillaries, and wherever this septic foci gets lodged, it starts forming another colony there. Bacterial colonization and another lesion development starts there. And because of this hematogenous spread, the visceral organs start showing numerous necrotic foci start developing there. Initially, around this foci, there is infiltration by neutrophils. Neutrophils try to attack this site, and there is formation of abscess. With liquid pus. If it is controlled there, all right. If it is not controlled there, or else if it is not controlled, the animal may die. Animal dies because of secondary complications. However, if the animal survives and also this abscess remains there, now it turns caseous. Now there is infiltration by the macrophages and also giant cells. Now that abscess turns into a granuloma. Apart from this type of inflammation, wherever the bacteria is in the ear or in the skin or joints or prepuce, wherever it lodges, it causes the inflammatory changes in that organ. So the histopathology will be there. We find either abscess with neutrophilic infiltration or granuloma with caseous necrosis. Abscess with liquefactive necrosis or granuloma with caseous necrosis. And with the caseous necrosis, it will be surrounded by epithelioid cells, macrophages, that is definitely, and giant cells. The kidneys will show septic embolic glomerulonephritis and pyelonephritis. Septic embolic glomerulonephritis. That means there will be glomerulonephritis characterized by presence of small abscess, septic abscess or septic granulomas around the blood vessels. That's why it is called as septic embolic glomerulonephritis and pyelonephritis. There will be interstitial pneumonia. The hematogenous spread of disease typically gives interstitial pneumonia. Okay, interstitial pneumonia, bronchi and bronchiole also contain suppurative exudate. Bronchi and bronchioles also contain suppurative exudate. The gram staining of tissues will also show irregular branching array of gram-positive rods. Present there. The diagnosis of the latent infection, hidden infection, is made by PCR or culture. Bacterial culture. And the sample for bacterial culture include submaxillary, that is cervical lymph node, submaxillary was in the postmortem examination. Submaxillary or cervical lymph node, oropharynx, nasopharynx, middle ear, preputial glands, and feces. These are the common sites where bacteria resides actually. Middle ear, preputial glands, and feces. The impression smear and staining of gram-positive and staining also reveals the gram-positive rods in irregular branching arrays of cells. Impression smear and staining also reveals gram-positive rods in irregular branching arrays of cells. The hidden infection, latent infection, can also be found out by serosurvey of a colony. Serosurvey of colony by ELISA, or by immunodiffusion test, but confirmation is better made by PCR only. Confirmation is made by PCR. Just hold on. The differential diagnosis, the other aspects of diagnosis includes the pathological in clinical disease, in clinically affected colonies, the pathological findings, the histopathology, and culture of the bacteria or sample from the affected organs, from the affected organs that can confirm the disease. Of course, with PCR, samples are same as in the latent infection. Samples are similar as in the latent infection. The differential diagnosis of abscess is to be made from infection of streptococcus, streptobacillus, mycoplasmosis, pulmonary abscess. Just hold on, just please hold on. Streptobacillus, mycoplasmosis, where we see pulmonary abscess in mycoplasmosis, and the cilia associated respiratory bacillus. Where the differential diagnosis is made for the abscess formation. Now we discuss the same disease in mice. In mice, the main clinical signs shown by mice inappetence, that is anorexia, inappetence, emaciation, rough hair coat or ruffled hair coat, the hunched posture, hypernia, nasal and ocular discharge, cutaneous ulceration and arthritis, In case of mice, there is another species of Corynebacteria, that is Corynebacterium bovis, that is pathogenic in case of mice. And in case of mice, Corynebacterium bovis causes hyperkeratotic dermatitis, which we'll later on discuss once again. The gross finding in Corynebacterium katsurayi infection include gray to white nodules, which are abscess or granuloma, depending on the stage. Gray to white nodules in kidney, liver, lung, and other affected parts. There is cervical lymphadenopathy, or lymphadenitis, cervical lymphadenitis. Then arthritis, typically on carpal, metacarpal, and tarsal metatarsal joints. Carpo-metacarpal and tarso-metatarsal joints on the feet. Carpo-metacarpal and tarso-metatarsal joints. In case the embolism, septic embolism has affected the skin, it will show embolic infarction, which later develops into ulcers and fistulas. The grayish white nodules, if it is in abscess stage, it will show liquid pus. If it is in the granuloma stage, it will show caseous exudate, presence of caseous exudate. Histopathology of the affected parts Histopathology of affected parts reveals coagulative necrosis and caseous necrosis. Coagulative necrosis and caseous necrosis, and in the abscess, liquefactive necrosis. In the abscess, liquefactive necrosis. In the abscess, there is neutrophilic infiltration around the foci, and in the caseous foci, there is infiltration by the macrophages and giant cells. Macrophages and giant cells. The caseous lesions show prominent colonies of bacteria, gram-positive bacteria. Prominent colonies of gram-positive bacteria. The arthritis is mucopurulent. Arthritis is mucopurulent, and bacterial colonies can be seen in synovium. Bacterial colonies can be seen in synovium. Mucopurulent arthritis is there, and bacterial colonies can be seen in synovium. There is necrosis, cartilage erosion, and ulcerations. There are also necrosis, cartilage erosion, and ulcerations. Necrosis, cartilage erosion, and ulcerations. And later stages, ankylosing panarthritis. Ankylosing panarthritis means the joint gets fibrosed. The fibrosis of joint takes place. Fibrosis of joint takes place. In case of Corynebacterium bovis, the skin shows acanthosis, moderate hyperkeratosis, and mild non-suppurative inflammation. The organism can be demonstrated in the skin, and they appear gram-positive. The diagnosis is made by very similarly as we do the diagnosis in the case of the rat. Same way, the PCR, the culture, the staining characteristics, all are very much similar in the rat and mice also. Differential diagnosis is to be made from, once again, streptococcus infection, mycoplasma infection, and Mycobacterium avium infection. Where the bacilli are acid fast bacilli, obviously, very easily. After this, we start with next disease, that is salmonellosis. There are numerous strains of Salmonella enterica that are affecting the actually it is Salmonella enterica and the serovariety. There are numerous serovarieties, 2,500 plus serovarieties that are affecting the rodents and other species. As we have paratyphoid in chicken. These paratyphoid salmonella are the major affecting salmonellas of the rodents. They differ in pathogenicity. They differ in their the content, also the level of the lesion development, and also they vary according to geographical distribution. In different parts of world, different varieties of these Salmonella are found. But we consider them as Salmonella enterica. Salmonella enterica is the major species and subspecies, and others are serovarieties. There are numerous serovarieties here, say Salmonella enterica enteridis, Salmonella enterica typhimurium, the lesions may be non-specific. Only congestion and hemorrhages in the visceral organs. In septicemic cases, lesions are non-specific, only congestion and hemorrhages in the organs, in the various organs. Any doubt, anybody till now? Anything you want to ask? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Then histopathological changes. Histopathology of the affected organs, like in intestine, it will show edema of lamina propria, edema of lamina propria, ulcers, ulcers with leukocytic infiltrations, ulcers with leukocytic infiltration. Crypt epithelial cells show reactive hyperplasia. That means the crypt epithelium becomes hyperplastic. Number of cells become more. The crypt epithelial cells show reactive hyperplasia. The Peyer's patches show lymphoid hyperplasia and focal necrosis. The Peyer's patches show lymphoid hyperplasia and focal necrosis and neutrophilic infiltration and neutrophilic infiltration. Spleen and mesenteric lymph node show also the the lymphoid hyperplasia, focal necrosis, and also infiltration by neutrophils. The spleen also shows the similar changes. In septicemic rats which died without any much clinical signs and gross lesions, there is necrosis of spleen and liver, and there is presence of septic emboli, with presence of which will show fibrin and bacteria in septic emboli, with presence of fibrin and bacteria in them, especially in liver, spleen, and lymph nodes. Especially in liver, spleen, and lymph nodes. All right. The diagnosis is made by colony screening, especially the fecal samples. These fecal samples can be screened in a colony for presence of Salmonella by culture or by PCR. By culture or by PCR. In suspected cases, the culture of bacteria and the PCR is very useful for diagnosis of disease. The culture and PCR can be done on feces, mesenteric lymph node from postmortem cases, mesenteric lymph node, liver, spleen from postmortem cases, and blood, again blood from the febrile cases, live febrile cases. The isolation of Salmonella is not very difficult. There is Salmonella enrichment agar and Salmonella specific agar are available. They can be enriched as in the Salmonella enrichment broth and inoculated in the specific agar. After isolation, it is very important to serotype the bacteria. Serotyping is very important, which will reveal which serotype has infected the colony. Salmonella enterica, which serotype is infecting. Differential diagnosis is to be made from Tyser's disease, rotavirus infection, rotavirus infection, enterococcal enteropathy, and cryptosporidiosis. Enterococcal enteropathy and cryptosporidiosis. Differential diagnosis. In case of mice, once again it is Salmonella enterica. However, there are different subspecies like Cholerae Suis, Salmonella enterica Cholerae Suis, Salmonella enterica enteridis, then same Salmonella enterica typhimurium. These are the more commonly associated. However, there are numerous other subspecies. There are numerous other serovarieties associated with it. the Pune, Dublin, Kentucky, so many numerous are associated. They are all zoonotic, same way. Their transmission is also very same. And one important point is that recovered mice becomes the asymptomatic carrier. Recovered mice becomes asymptomatic carrier. The mice also show genetic resistance against Salmonella. They will show genetic resistance against this Salmonella, and there are some inbred lines. Inbred lines, they have been scientists have produced them, which are actually resistant to Salmonella infection. In spite of being inbred, they carry the genes which cause the resistance against the Salmonella. Once again, among all the predisposing factors, once again, the iron overload is a reason for development of disease. The Salmonella, once it acquires iron, it proliferates very fast. If we discuss the pathogenesis, then they describe the pathogenesis keeping in mind the Salmonella enterica enteritidis. And Salmonella enterica enteritidis pathogenesis, and it depends the pathogenesis of. Now pathogenesis is also relevant for rats, more or less, if not completely, then more or less for rats also. It depends on the ability of Salmonella to attack the intestinal walls. To attack the intestinal walls, it will enter the intestinal walls and go and attack the lymphatic tissue. For example, Peyer's patches. Lymphatic tissue like the Peyer's patches. There they will multiply and from there disseminate to other parts of the intestinal lymphoid tissue, where they will multiply and reach to other Peyer's patches in the intestine, and also later stages to mesenteric lymph node. Later stages to mesenteric lymph node. These are the primary site of primary site of bacterial proliferation. Now, during this multiplication, at some point, the bacteremia will occur. At some point, the bacteremia will occur, and this leads to spread of Salmonella to other parts of body. Other parts of body like spleen, lymph node, liver, and within the several days. If this bacteremia is very severe, it turns into septicemia. If this bacteremia is very severe, it turns into septicemia, and septicemic death of the animal may take place. If this bacteremia is very severe, septicemic death may take place. Or the septicemia can occur after the bacteria is proliferating in visceral organs, like spleen, lymph node, liver, etc. Once it is attacked there and it is proliferating there, at that point it may actually lead to severe septicemia. The mice which recover from this bacteremic and septicemic stage, the mice which recover, I should say the acute phase. The mice which recover from this acute phase, in them the bacteria remains hidden and persistent. In them, the Salmonella will remain hidden and persistent in the affected organs like spleen, lymph node, lymphoid tissue, liver, and especially the infection of liver and gallbladder. Infection of liver and gallbladder leads to shedding of Salmonella into the intestine and then feces. Infection of liver and gallbladder leads to the shedding of Salmonella into the intestine and then in the feces, which is major reason for spread of this disease. This shedding is not continuous, but it is intermittent. So the bacteria can intermittently appear in the feces. Intermittently means some days it will be appearing in feces, some days it will not be, for months altogether. And thus the whole colony at some or the other point gets infected. So this is how the whole colony gets infected. Moreover, there are always episodes of recurrence of disease in these because of this hidden infection. So once the relapse of acute phase takes place, again mortality will be there. It will subside. They will keep shedding. Then after a few days, again relapse of acute phase. Some mortality will be there. It will subside, and this keeps going on, keeps going on. Okay, until unless some steps are taken to remove the salmonella from the farm. The clinical signs include that there may be very severe diarrhea in very severe disease in young mice, which is characterized by the anorexia, weight loss, lethargy, dull and ruffled hair coat, humped posture, and sometimes conjunctivitis. The gastroenteritis is seen on postmortem definitely, but diarrhea is not a consistent finding. It may or may not occur. And even in affected animals affected with GIT infection, feces may actually appear normal. Even in affected animals, feces may appear normal. In subacute infections, there can be distension of abdomen due to severe hepatomegaly and splenomegaly. In subacute infection, where the bacteria is actually has invaded the liver and spleen, there can be severe hepatomegaly and splenomegaly, leading to distension of abdomen. The abdomen appears distended. In chronic cases, there is long-term anorexia and weight loss. Long-term anorexia and weight loss. Enzootic means like we have the endemic infection. Right? Endemic, the word for the animals is enzootic. In colony with enzootic infection, there is repeated recurrence of mortality. That I told, the relapse, acute phase relapse. So there will be in endemic colonies, there will be repeated recurrence of mortality where the acute phase recurs after a period of latency. Where the acute phase recurs after a period of latency. In this disease, the animals may show diarrhea. On this recurrent phase, diarrhea is observed commonly. Diarrhea is seen, anorexia is seen, weight loss, and rough hair coat with mortality. In this recurrent phase, diarrhea is seen, anorexia is seen, weight loss, and rough hair coat with mortality are observed in the affected colonies. The gross pathology in acute gross pathological change, postmortem changes. In case of acute septicemic disease, there may be no lesions. Or simply visceral hyperemia, or simply the congestion of visceral organs, or pale liver and catarrhal enteritis. Catarrhal enteritis. If mice survive for several weeks, if the mice can survive for several weeks after this acute phase, then intestinal distension and reddening are seen. On postmortem, intestinal distension and congestion appearing as reddening of intestine are seen. Liver and spleen will show yellow-gray foci of necrosis. This point is to be differentially diagnosed from Tysus disease and Corynebacterium cocksura, isn't it? Liver and spleen will show yellow-gray foci of necrosis. Lymph nodes show enlargement, congestion, and focal necrosis. And myocardium also can show necrotic changes. The histopathology depends on the severity of infection, how severely the animal was affected, or how many number of bacteria have proliferated in the body. So in acute phase, there are necrotic foci in intestine. In acute phase, there are necrotic foci in the intestine, mesenteric lymph nodes, liver, and spleen. the necrotic foci in intestine, mesenteric lymph nodes, liver, and spleen. The lymph nodes show accumulation of neutrophils and histiocytes, that is macrophages. Lymph nodes will show, instead of lymphoid tissue, they will show presence of neutrophils and histiocytes. There is septic venous embolism. And this leads to thrombosis in liver. And in chronic salmonellosis, liver shows granulomas. Presence of granulomas. These are very characteristic. Granulomatous inflammation or granulomatous hepatitis of salmonella. Differential diagnosis from Tietz's disease. The Pseudomonas corynebacterium, even Pasteurella for septicemia, Pasteurella. The Ectromelia virus, systemic infection by Ectromelia virus. These are very important diseases. In guinea pigs, the same way, similarly, Salmonella enterica, various species infect the guinea pigs. In acute phase in guinea pigs, there are non-specific signs of illness and diarrhea, which are not very specific. But in chronic phase, they show wasting for several weeks, splenomegaly, hepatomegaly, and mesenteric lymphadenopathy. Those animals which recover from acute phase become chronic intermittent shedders of salmonella. Diagnosis is very much similar as I have discussed in case of the rats. Like colony screening in all species, colony screening by fecal sample through culture or PCR. Then from suspected cases, once again, culture and PCR of these samples are very important. In the end, serotyping is the ultimate point of diagnosis, serotyping. All right. So here we conclude this salmonellosis. Any confusion, anything you want to ask? Anything you want me to repeat? Yes? Okay.